baseball. 2 weeks from today, we will be getting ready to watch the Gamecocks take the field at Founders Park, and we certainly can't wait for that. But, Coach, we got some big news here during the break. Apparently, on Wednesday next week, Netflix is going to tell us when season 5 of Stranger Things is coming out.
Oh, well, I probably need to get started on season 1. So that one's not right on my list. Is that something I should have been watching? Is that one of your favorites?
Okay, so look, I am not a sci-fi guy.
Yeah.
Don't like sci-fi, don't care for it. And when it came out, the first one, I don't even remember how long ago that was. That had to be probably 2018 or 19, somewhere in there. Someone said you need to watch it, and it had a mixture of real life and sci-fi in it. So I really ended up enjoying 1, 2, even in season 3. It had a great plot, the whole 9 yards. Season 4 came out and it got just way too sci-fi for me, so I quit watching it. But now they're doing it again, though, Coach. They reel you back in. Well, you won't believe season 5. You just can't. So now I'm like, well, I don't know. Should I just go back and watch 4? I don't know.
No, it seems like that would be the logical thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
You got to do that. My Netflix, I always go off, I hate to admit this, Mike Morgan. So I always call Mike and say, what should I watch next? And then this week, I got caught back up in the O.J. Simpson trial. And as my wife said when she was walking out of the room, I said, do you want me to pause it? She goes, no, I think I kind of know how this ends. But they put a new spin on it. I don't know if you guys watched the new 4-part thing they did this week, which was it's amazing how that's still fascinating, and it's 30 years ago. And that was kind of why they came back out saying how that stayed in our mainstream even after all those years.
Yeah, I have not gotten to it yet. Matter of fact, that is on my list, and maybe tonight after dinner and the little Rugrats finally leave me alone, maybe I'll tap into that and see what it's all about. Well, Mike gets a lot of his recs from us.
Yeah.
So American Primeval on Netflix is the best thing on TV right now.
I've thought about doing it, and just for you'll know, he doesn't give you any credit. It's always just his ideas. Yeah. So at least Mike's consistent with that.
Yeah, that's Mike Morgan to a T. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. The Primeval, though, it's you can't stop. It is wow. I mean, I don't think I've ever watched anything like that on TV, and it is just something hard to stomach parts of it, but you can handle it. You're a baseball coach. Yeah. We've seen everything. All right, Coach. Well, we're a couple of days or a couple of weeks out now, finally, and we're starting to learn a little bit more about this group. One of the keys to the season is obviously Ethan Petrie. I mean, he everybody will talk about him, and there's no doubt about that. I want to talk about everyone else around him and how he affects them, because this game, as we all well know, if you've got a 3-4 hitter and nothing else, you don't have a 3-4 hitter. I mean, they're not going to carry you through 56 games. I mean, they'll have their moments, but they won't be able to maximize who they are, right? So, what surrounds him, and how will his presence, probably in the 3-hole, I would imagine, and Kennedy's presence in the 4-hole or 2-3, however they end up working it there, as a baseball coach, as a guy who's run a program like you have, and also been an assistant like you have, you've seen every angle of how you figure out a lineup and all those type things. We've seen Ethan hit in the 2-hole. We've seen Ethan hit in the 3-hole. We've seen Ethan hit in the 4-hole. Hell, I think there was even talk one time about putting him in the leadoff spot just to get the thing going. Where do you believe Ethan Petrie is most comfortable?
Well, let me start with this. This is the coolest weekend to figure stuff out in Division I. Now, Division II and JUCO, they're starting today and tomorrow. So they hopefully have figured it out. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But this is the weekend where kind of the rubber hits the road. You can see what lineups coaches put on the field this weekend in your scrimmages are really what they're kind of leaning toward. So I'm pretty excited. When you and I finish up here today, Coach Tanner's coming over. I'm sitting in the radio booth here, which I'll probably be about every Friday with you. And we're just going to watch, because he's asked me questions. He hadn't been to a scrimmage yet. I've probably been to all of them, but maybe a midweek. But I feel like you got to put Ethan in the 3 spot, and for a couple of reasons. One, I think you have some good table setters and some guys I'm going to talk about, but he's got to hit in the first inning. I'm not big on putting your, quote, best guy in the fourth spot. He may not even hit in the first inning some innings, especially when you get into conference because of the pitching. But looking at the lineups, today again, I'll be able to tell you next Friday what the weekend lineups were, and I think we'll have a better grip. But Nathan Hall's led off almost every time I've been over here. Mm-hmm. So I think they really feel like Hall could be a guy at the top who brings you some power, gets on base, can run. I think Kazmar will be involved in that 2 spot, a veteran guy. And if those 2 guys can get on base for you, then you got to maybe hopefully Ethan get some balls. He had 3 home runs last weekend. He had a home run each scrimmage. So, I mean, his power and his ability to do what we know he does, he's brought it with him in this preseason. You mentioned the name right now. I think if my eyes were picking it out, I bet Kennedy Jones will probably hit 4th right now because he's really had a solid fall. He's had a solid preseason. Last week I saw Talmadge LeCroy in that 5 spot, which makes a lot of sense of an older guy being in that role. He was playing some first base last weekend. He caught in the middle of the week. I really like seeing him there. But then you start bringing in guys like Blake Jackson, another veteran guy. KJ Scooby, who finally got to play in the scrimmage the other day, had a foot issue last week. Everything that they tell me, he's a dude. So he's going to be in. And I haven't even mentioned, Will Tippett. Will Tippett, as you probably know, is one of my favorites. He's just a guy that I've always thought doesn't realize how good he could be. And I know they kind of had him at second base. I heard Coach Mainieri say maybe play some first base. They've got Ethan Petrie at first base right now. So I do think they've got a lot of pieces that are fun to figure out around. But if I'm ordering my lineup cards and I'm being serious, I just tell my manager, have Petrie's name put in the 3 spot and printed. I don't even want to have to write it again because I'm just going to leave him in that 3 spot and figure everything out around him because I got to maximize his at-bats. I'm not big into putting them in leadoff spots because sometimes your mentality changes of, I got to do this now that I'm hitting first. He's a dude to me. You put in that 3 spot and leave him alone and just let him hit his home runs and drive in his runs because he is so consistent for this offense.
Okay, so because I totally agree with all that. Petrie's your 3-hole guy. So a couple of things when you're the 3-hole guy there, right? Obviously, if nobody's on base in front of you, nobody wants to issue a walk with 2 outs. We know that in the game of baseball, if you get beat with a solo home run, you get beat with a solo home run. That's better than a 2-run homer or a 3-run homer. So he will see pitches to hit if nobody is on base. But that's where I'm going with this. Knowing the fear that stands in the 3-hole of Ethan Petrie, generally speaking here, this is what I'm trying to do here, Coach, is use our platform to be as educational as we can to our audience when it comes to the game of baseball. How do pitchers approach throwing to the leadoff guy and to the 2-hole guy when you've got that All-American standing there in the 3-hole? And what do they need to be? What do their strengths need to be to best help Ethan Petrie in the 3-hole?
Well, this comes from my catcher mentality too, plus the coaching. I can hear it right now, the pitching coach, right before that guy runs out on the mound, especially non-conference guys. Hey, we got to throw strikes early. We cannot let them get on base, distract you by running, which both Paul and Kazmar can do, and a couple other guys on this team, Ethan Stone. They can distract you once they get on base. Mm-hmm. So, man, I'm super excited that whoever's hitting in front of him is going to get a lot of fastballs because they are not going to try to go deep counts. They don't want to walk those guys. They want to attack those guys hitting in front of him because, as you're right, they see him on deck, and he has that presence in the league that he'll be on deck, and that guy on the mound, especially non-SEC guys, you're going to see a ton of walks, in my opinion, prior to him hitting because they're going to still be thinking that little voice of the pitching coach going, throw strikes, throw strikes. Well, then that's when it's hard to throw strikes, as you know. Then they see him swinging a heavy bat on deck, getting ready to hit, so they're tense a little bit more. I think you'll see a lot more walks preceding Ethan hit than you expect because of those nerves. That'll change some when you get in conference because the quality of starter and quality of guy to be on the mound. But the SEC is a testosterone league. I promise you, with no one on and Ethan standing at the plate, that starting pitcher still thinks he can throw by that pitch by him or his best pitch by him. So he will get more pitches to hit. That's what I used to tell when I coach guys of this caliber. Don't you trick yourself into thinking you're not going to get pitches. You're going to get pitches. You have to be ready to hit your pitches, especially early in the count.
Especially when you throw it on the black and they call it a ball these days.
Yeah.
One of the things that I felt like Ethan needed, or Pet, are we allowed to call him Pet around here, or is that just reserved for the dugout?
I've just always called him Ethan. I'll be honest. I love nicknames. I've never called him. You can call him Pet. I'll be fine with that.
Okay, well, I'll go with that until someone calls me and says don't do it. No, we'll call him Ethan. One of the things that I actually thought going into the offseason for Ethan, a coach, that not that he's not capable of it. We know he's capable of it. The best example was LSU a couple of years ago. He turned Paul Skeens around in a hurry. But one of the things that he does that I felt like he also needed to do was continue to be consistent in hitting the fastball. There would be moments last year where, and it wasn't just him, but a lot of the guys on that team just couldn't hit the fastball. Well, if you can't hit the fastball, you can't hit, in my opinion. Not at that level. Yeah. So, but if you hung one up there, it wasn't staying in the yard. It would get out in a hurry. So, what do you know? We know about Monty. We know everything there is to know about Monty when it comes to how he approaches it. What have we learned, or have you learned anything about Paul Mainieri and how he is working with Ethan Petry we know he's one of the best players in the country, to prove that by being able to hit the fastballs in this league. And for what it's worth, for everybody wondering, those are coming 95 to 98. This ain't 90, 93 anymore. It's 95. Every team has dudes. Now every team doesn't even have a dude. They have dudes.
Yeah.
So he's going to have, as you mentioned, I can throw the fastball to this guy. That is going to happen. And those guys love that challenge, coach. This is the best hitter in the country. I'm going to show him that I can throw 97 right by him. So what have you learned about what they have been doing to get him consistent to be able to drive that pitch out of the yard or at least into the gap somewhere?
Well, I've still just had to watch from the outside. I'm excited when the season starts, because when the season starts, you get to be in the dugout a little more pregame. You get to really, then you start traveling. I can't tell you how excited I am just to sit in a hotel with Coach Mainieri this spring at some point, on a Thursday night or Friday morning, just talk baseball, because he is baseball. I mean, he is
it's cool.
The stories and just the way he can relate it to players is such a big deal. But what I've seen him do, and again, in my limited view, is he knows how important the analytics are. He will say things that he knows it. But then he's so great at keeping it simple at the same time. And what I see a lot of at their practices, and like I'm here early, they got early hitting today. We know what's coming. We're going to advise you, but we're not going to try to paralyze you. The old paralysis by analysis. I think that happens a lot right now in college baseball, maybe even more than pro baseball, because I was sitting with Christian Walker and I got to go grab lunch the other day, and he said something that relates back to college hitters. To me, in pro baseball, if you don't get the starter, you're probably not getting a hit or many runs, because everybody coming out of the bullpen now throws 100. So he said our mindset is so focused on the starter and learning what he does, seeing video, and you can do that in college. And that's what he and I talked about. And I know he's speaking to the team next Wednesday, translating that. Do all your homework, do your study, and know what's coming. But then you got to get in the box and know what you do well. And what you just said, Ethan Petry is going to have to hit the fastball because he will get challenged. Up to this point, he sure has so far this preseason, but that is something big that he'll have to do. And I hope he continues to get multiple swings in his at-bats. That's been fun for me. He has really came to the plate aggressive within the zone. You mentioned that the strike zone is sometimes smaller than 17 inches now in college baseball because they're so nervous of the track man grading them. He's been ready for those pitches, and that's what's been impressive.
It's 11:19. We will hit a timeout. I do see some of your questions in the chat box. One of them is about the lefty from Florence, Aiden Palmer. And Craig, I believe you might have somebody confused. You might be asking about Dalton Mayshore. His dad did play in the big leagues with Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco. But if that's who it is, anyways, we'll get to that. We got a lot to get to when it comes to this team because there's nobody better to do it than Stuart Lake, and we're glad to have him. As I mentioned, it's 11:20. It's time for a timeout, but we're brought to you by our good buddy Tony Pope, right? TonyPope.com. Tony Pope State Farm in South Carolina and in Georgia. They are licensed, and they're Gamecocks. Like you some of these insurance folks, you can't trust them. You can trust a Gamecock. I can tell you that. Tony's name's always running around in there in Williams-Brice Stadium up on the banners and the scoreboard and all that stuff, and he runs around our board here. TonyPope.com. More with Coach Lake when we return.
Charleston Fitness Equipment is keeping South Carolina in shape. Clients have come from all over the Palmetto State to find that one piece of equipment that they enjoy that keeps them looking and feeling good. Whether it's a home rower, treadmill, elliptical, free weights, a home gym, or something else, Charleston Fitness Equipment keeps the mirror smiling back at you. Get in shape like the Gamecocks do. Visit charlestonfitnessequipment.com. Gamecock owned and operated and proud partners of Inside the Gamecocks, the show.
Nana's Porch presents a Southern staple delivered right to your doorstep. Nana's Porch locally crafted pimento cheese has been a hit for years at weddings, tailgates, and other events. Now you can order online and have it sent to your home. Visit nanasporch.com. That's nanasporch.com and click the pimento cheese tab to choose between their original pimento cheese and their jalapeno smoked pimento cheese set. nanasporch.com, man, that's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is.
On deep drive to left. Morgan looks up and it is gone. That one is a problem.
That ball rid to right and deep and gone. Swinging a drive. Left field, way back and gone.
Yeah, opening day is soon. 2 weeks away, and you'll get to hear two great voices as well calling it for Carolina on the radio. Well, actually, not just two. There will be more than that. There's only one Derek Scott, and sometimes things overlap, and he's got basketball until that's over, which is looking probably sooner than you'd like this season before he transitions to Gamecock baseball. But this cat will be in the booth a bunch. Stuart Lake, this will be his second year in Tommy's seat, keeping it warm for him. And he did a wonderful job in year one. I truly mean that. I mean it when I say it, or else I wouldn't. It is so enjoyable to sit on that back porch on my beautiful Palm Casual furniture. And while we have the game on TV, no disrespect to all those guys. I love Kip, and Grayson gets in there and all that stuff too. Mute. I got Lake on. Sorry, Grayson. Sorry about that. But
he's young. He'll get over it.
He'll be all right. Yeah, he'll be fine. Okay, back to the team here. I want to squeeze these in too from the chat box. Our buddy Bruin, he's from South Florence, so he keeps a close eye on the Bruins, who are doing things in Columbia. Coach, I've heard that Aiden Palmer, he's got a very live arm. We know that.
Yeah.
And I've heard he has done some really nice things, and he is going to help this team this year. The only thing that I would say, I don't even know that it's a negative, he's just young, is he hasn't probably commanded the strike zone as much as he's going to be capable of. But what have you heard about Aiden?
Well, a lot of positive things. And again, this weekend, you almost as a coach, last weekend was super fun. It was the first time you got to scrimmage, and do but there was a lot of nerves. I mean, it was the first time guys that ran out of that bullpen to the mound in a couple months, maybe some of them for the first time because they didn't get to throw for whatever reasons in the fall. You enjoy it, you take notes from it, and then you probably stash them away. This weekend is really going to start deciding, okay, is this guy going to help us the first weekend against, Sacred Heart, or is this guy transitioning into a midweek guy? You're going to have to determine your starters. This is the weekend that you want to start figuring out who are our first 4 starters, in this case 5, because when we open up, we then have at Winthrop and Queens at home the next week. So you're going to have 5 starters revealed in the first 5 games before you even get back to another weekend. But he has certainly, I think, had positive moments, and this weekend will be another one. I'm not sure when he's throwing. Kent Riker to get here in a little while and kind of have the weekend laid out for us, but he's certainly a guy that's getting his name in the mix.
By the way, next Saturday, the 8th, the First Pitch Banquet. It is an annual event, 6 o'clock at Seawells right there, not far from Williams-Brice Stadium. If you'd like to go, tickets are $120 a piece, and you'll have a chance to hear Coach Mainieri speak, and then he'll do a Q&A with the fans as well. I wonder who will ask him if they're going to throw to the tight end more this season. On the schedule, real quick, I guess I'd probably need to do a little bit more research, but I like something that is going on here in February, Coach. I know you mentioned the 5 and basically in 5 days, 6 days between Valentine's Day and Wednesday, the 19th, they will play 5 games. But then after that, you've got the 3-game series against Milwaukee, then just 1 midweek, and then Clemson, then you got a couple of midweeks. And then after that, it's all 1 midweek game. They're not loaded down with 2 midweeks, playing a ton of 5-game weeks. I kind of like how this is playing itself out for South Carolina. I know they'll play a couple of midweeks later in the season, where generally, like we've seen in the past, they've had full weeks off between SEC series. Never been a huge fan of that, to be honest with you, Coach. When a guy's on a heater, he wants to keep playing. Yeah. And when a guy's scuffling, you want to try to get him out of it in the middle of the week. And if you're playing SEC series and nothing in between, it's hard for those two things to happen. So I kind of like how all this is playing itself out.
I do too. I like the way, I think especially a new staff, you're trying to really determine your starters. So the more games you play early, the more real experience you get to see how they react. Because it may just be determined that a guy's better coming out of the bullpen than letting him know for, 48 hours or whatever he's a starter. That's important. Some guys are really good at being a starter. Some guys are terrible at being a starter because they overthink it. So I like that too, but I'm with you. I used to hate when the midweeks and the exams were about the only time with Coach Tanner we would do it because we had to. You get in a rhythm. That's why pro baseball plays 162, minor leagues 144. This game's about failure, and if you don't even have opportunities to fail, you think a ton about it, and then you just go from Friday night guy SEC to Friday night SEC. It's really hard to ever get out of a funk. Yeah,
there's no question about that. Dalton Mayshore was asked about as well. A very interesting case study here at South Carolina. He's listed at 5'10", almost 200 pounds. He's a senior from beautiful Eagle, Idaho, which is a little bit west of Boise, close to the border, not far from the border of Oregon. His story is very unique because his father has been a hitting coordinator in the Dodgers organization, and I believe one other. Grandfather played in the big leagues. His dad played in that era with Big Mac and Jose Canseco. Well, when they were out there in Oakland, he's got more family that have a lot of big league. So those guys, I compare that to my brother. Can't believe I don't have better friends than this, but Mike Sisko. I mean, he always had a sixth and a seventh sense about playing the game of baseball. Those guys, they're just built different because they grow up in it. Jeff and Galen, the whole story, obviously. So, I'm really curious about this kid. I know he's got some juice. He hit 13 home runs last year at St. Mary's. How much have you – it's kind of a crowded outfield, but in an interesting way. A bunch of guys who've played a ton of ball. You got different players out there. They're not all just, You know, they're not all just power guys. They got guys who can do different things. Where does he fit in?
Well, it's curious this weekend. That's where I want to see. As I write my lineups on a sheet of paper, the outfield's the easiest to put a bunch of guys. I mean, you got Nathan Hall, you got Kennedy Jones, Blake Johnson. Don't forget Evan Stone. Then you miss Dalton Mayshore. That seems to me, if you had to pick, and let's break it down this way: outfield, infield, catching, pitching. Which one do you just kind of say, hey, they're good outfield? And I know Coach will have to figure out who's playing and get things there, but that outfield's pretty solid. That is a veteran outfield. St. Mary's very good teams. They've come actually out to the East Coast before, played them at Charleston Southern. But the first thing I thought when you said Dalton Mayshore, can you hear Tommy grabbing onto Eagle, Idaho? You know he would have related it back to some guy that played in 1938 or and then he would have asked me like I should know him. You know who's famous from, Eagle, Idaho? Of course, I would have said no. And he would have named a guy that, was – that's why I love when those type guys get in this program. And now he's got a fantastic story, but that's what's cool to me about the transfer portal. There's some things that stink about it. But, and this is a guy that the pedigree you just said, he's already played in a good program, but he gets to put on his resume SEC. And that's a big deal. And those guys can bring energy to you when they come into your program.
Yeah, there's no doubt. This is a Monty Lee guy here. Monty found him, and he's here. I like this kid. Him and the Katzmar kid who's going to play short, or a little. I know that maybe a little bit different as far as players, power, stuff like that. Clearly, one's a shortstop, but they're dirtbags.
Yeah.
They're dirtbags. And I was talking to Kyle Jordan the other day about the Citadel and all the issues that they've had over the years. And one of the things, as you well know, that long made the Citadel great. And if you go back to the best years at the University of South Carolina, you think about when they won the World Series. Think about guys like Wingo and Adrian Morales, and you go back to all the guys that from the old days, Kevin Melillo, and guys like dirtbags. Man, they just love the game. They play their asses off. You're not going to outcompete them. And that's what I've learned about these two guys. Like, they've added a lot of that into this program in the offseason.
Yeah, and that's important. It really matters at this level. It matters at every level. But at this level, a lot of times you can get a lot of guys that want to cruise. They feel like they've accomplished a goal, or they've been treated a certain way because they're really good and they cruise. You need dudes that ain't cruising. I remember that 2000 team. Nate Janowitz, a name that was just a guy that he and Marcus McBeth literally got in a fight in center field at a scrimmage. And I love them both. I talk to them both to this day. And I bring them in, and we send Marcus to one dugout, and Jano comes to mine. And I go, hey, what's the problem? He goes, I want to play center field, but that freaking guy's a lot better than me. And I'm going to try to intimidate him to tell him he needs to play left field. And that's what he was doing. Then you go over, and Marcus is like, hey, I'm way better than Jano. Y'all need to go ahead and move Jano.
Oh, we got a freeze here.
So that is where you feel like Kaczmar, he brings an edge to him. I kind of watch him. In fact, he's doing something today with Kent. I didn't know he's like a magician. Like what? Literally a sleight of hand, does card tricks. So that's going to come out today. They're doing some kind of thing with him about 11:45. So I don't know if he just moves three hats around. I don't know what he does, but I found that kind of cool that a guy is that kind of guy. So he's a clubhouse guy that brings way more to you than just a solid player. And then, as you said with Mayshore, I haven't gotten to know him at all. To be honest, if you don't have his T-shirt on, his number, I don't even know which one he is. But he's a guy that I look forward to on a road trip or in the dugout early, because I just come over, don't tell Wayne and Tyson, but I like to come over early and hang out on game days. And those are the guys I love grabbing in the dugout. It's so easy, JB, to find out your guys because they're in the dugout long before they need to be. Mm-hmm. They don't really sit upstairs. They'll be in the locker room some, but the real dudes are always out in the dugout, hanging out, maybe taking ground balls. I'm looking right now. There's 5 guys hitting right now, and they scrimmage at 1:30. And those are the guys that typically carry the water for you because you need dudes that care and love pulling that jersey on every day.
Well, there's no question. One of the guys that does too is Talmadge LeCroy. It feels like he's going to be the starting catcher in game one, and then he'll have to hold on to it. You know, I think him and Bakes are 1-2 from what I'm told. To be fully honest, if anybody had asked me for my opinion, I thought that Talmadge LeCroy got away from the game and got away from himself too many times in the last couple of years. This game bites you, and we know that. And if you disrespect it, you're going to pay for it. And so my understanding is that there was a focus on that this offseason collectively, you know, with Coach Monty and Coach Mainieri and Talmadge, you know, really needing to, you know, look inside yourself, bud, you know, and you are capable. You're a good player. You've had great moments here. You talk about dirt bags. I mean, he's the dirtiest one on the team every time you see him.
Yeah.
But he, in certain moments, you know, you got to love the passion, but if you cross that line sometimes, it turns into more of a negative than a positive. But if you can control it, it can really help you become a better player. If he's the catcher, he's going to be the guy, and he's going to have to stand in some. Nobody's going to fill Messina's shoes, but you got to be the very best you can possibly be to be the best version of who you are. What have you learned about Talmadge LeCroy and who he is as they're set to start this year?
Well, Talmadge LeCroy and I go further back than Talmadge didn't even exist. His dad had played at Anderson Junior College, transferred to Newberry College in 1989. I'm a freshman learning to catch, and I'm struggling. I have a head coach who's now my son's head coach, 1'9", Tim Medlin. He's in me every day. I was a pretty decent hitter trying to learn to catch, so I completely had forgot about hitting. Now I'm not hitting worth anything. I'm struggling catching. And, you know, Talmadge's dad, Jody, said, hey, I'm going home tomorrow. You know, ride with me. Let's just ride home and hit. My dad throws great BP. My little brother will hit with us. Let's just go up and hit. And I go home with him. I've always given him credit. He helped me become. Now, he was a right-handed hitter. I was left-handed. He helped me just get back to being who I was, just a hitter. Now, his fat little brother, as he called him, was a pretty good hitter, too. I think you remember Matthew, who went on, he played about 8 years in the big leagues. He's a AAA coach now for the Nationals, and he played at Clemson. So I'm hitting with them, and you talk dirtbags. This is what their family was. So I was able to recruit Talmadge here. And I remember talking to Coach Couch, who was the recruiting coordinator. He said, tell me about it. I said, I know what he is. I know where he's from. He wasn't a bearded, long-haired guy when I knew him. And you saw that, as you said, kind of try to find himself through his career here. But I knew what was in that kid. That kid can play. Mm-hmm. He was a shortstop and a catcher in high school. I visualized him coming here being a utility-type guy. And then he got plugged right in at third because of injuries that year, and they had a hard year. And it's tough to be a freshman in this league. And you're right. I think he kind of maybe drifted more, tried to fit in or whatever. I don't know. But this fall, I see the dude I visualized 4 years ago. No beard anymore, clean shave, haircut. He's out here catching, but he didn't catch it all last weekend. So when the weekend ended, I wore Monty out too. I said, hey, LeCroy, okay, played first. He hit. He goes, yeah, he's fine. He don't need to give me any more details than that. But then I come over this week, and Derek Urquhart, one of my favorite all-time guys here, sits with me at scrimmage. LeCroy catches. He throws the guy out. I can hear him. It's a scrimmage, but I can hear him talking to the pitcher. I can hear him telling an infielder where to be. So, of course, I bugged Monty right after the game. I said, hey, I loved him back behind the plate. He brought a leadership. He looked like a 22-year-old guy catching. Nothing against Bakes or any of the other guys. He just looked like a guy. He blocked a couple balls in the dirt. He threw a guy out with energy. And I would be shocked today. I haven't seen the lineup yet. Certainly think he's probably behind the plate today. And as you said, I see him catching a lot of games for him this year.
Yeah, I do too. You know, I try to think back of the guys that I know who, okay, it's your time. You need to get it, especially coming after a dude. You know, I remember in 2001, as you well know, when Tim Whitaker became the starting catcher after Brandon Pack. And Landon was just signed. And it seemed like on the outside looking in at that point in time, people had almost forgot that Tim Whitaker was on the team because Brandon was an All-American and Landon was Landon. And then Whitaker has an All-American type season. He was pretty good behind the plate. Offensively, he was elite.
Yeah.
And then, you move forward. I mean, you think about the 2010 team, and we could come up with a bunch of examples, obviously, Coach, but the 2010 team, a little bit of a different scenario here. Kyle developed into a pretty elite defensive player, a timely hitter. He was a solid option for that team, a leader on the team. He moves on, and then Brady becomes, one of the dudes. Robert Berry all of a sudden is catching, and people are going, and these guys just have moment after moment after moment after moment. And I really attributed that not just because they could play, but I attributed that to the experience that you just brought up with Tao. I mean, they were 22 years old. They've been around the game for a while. They knew what it looked like. They understood the highs and the lows and the fact that you have to stay here. You can't get up here and down here. You got to be right here. And that's what I think is going to be the biggest thing for Lee Croy this year. He has a chance to be one of the great leaders of this team. You know him better than all of us. This is just, watching him play over the years and all those type things, Coach. And I think, I don't want to say as he goes, the team goes. That's not really a fair statement. But certainly if he's going, this team's probably going too.
Well, I agree. And I'm obviously always biased as a former catcher, and that's the only position that all the other 8 guys look at. You can be a left fielder and have bad body language. You can get away with it really pretty much the whole time, except maybe a coach who's looking at you. I was taught, because I was the outfield coach, to keep your eyes on them in the outfield by Coach Tanner. But to be honest, you can have some bad body language everywhere but catching. You cannot have bad body language catching. You've got to be a guy that if you strike out, you better get over here, get your gear on, and hustle back out. If you hit a home run, you better hustle over here, get your gear on, and hustle back out. And I really do think this could be a Talmadge's role on this team. I don't think he's thinking, I got to out-hit Ethan Petrie or I got to outdo so-and-so. I think he's starting to embrace that this could be my role to really be a leader, because you got a veteran guy at shortstop. I mean, I think that's what we're going to find out with him at short. If you get Nathan Hall or Ethan or Evan Stone or whoever ends up in center, again, you got another veteran guy. And if you can start to get old and veteran up the middle, you got a lot better chance of winning. And that is really important. Coach Mainieri said in his press conference, this is an old league now. Does that mean that KJ Scooby can't play as a freshman? No. But go around opening day, or maybe even, let's do this, JB. Let's wait the opening day of SEC play and see how many freshmen really are playing. There won't be a ton. And these are the elite of the elite freshmen. And there won't be a ton playing because this league is so veteran and old guy oriented right now.
You mentioned Hall. I meant to mention this earlier. This is a pretty unique stat. And then we'll hit our final quick timeout, Coach. But Nathan Hall hit 320 between 320 or 330 between those two in the Cape. That's getting it done. That's getting it done.
Yeah.
For a guy who's I was told he's got the build. Like scouts. Oh yeah, who's that kid?
Well, I'll tell you this real quick before you take the break. Last week, there was a handful of scouts here, and I said, what are y'all doing here? It's so cold. It's kind of a bad day. He said, we're just here to look at guys. We want to see what they look like physically. And a name that came up to me by over half those scouts is, dude, Nathan Hall looks good in the uniform.
Yeah.
That was said numerous times last Friday on a very miserable, cold day.
Look good, play good. Yep. Let's hope that holds true this year. It is 11:44. You know what else looks good are those electric bikes at Electric Bikes of Charleston. Hello, Michelle. Michelle Wilkins is like one of the most fantastic people ever. They donate to NIL at South Carolina. Obviously, they're partners with us. They're the neighbors you want. You know, you have the crappy neighbor or the one that you try to avoid. You're going out to the mail and you turn around and you're like, oh, God, let me act like I'm on the phone for a second. That's not the Wilkins family. You see them, you run to them, and you want to talk to them, and they have the sweetest products out there. Electric Bites Charleston. The spring's right around the corner. Get through opening day, then the spring will be here. Opening day always sucks. It'll be 35 and raining. We know. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to be 70 and sunny this year. Yeah. 70 and sunny on opening day, and that's the perfect weather to ride around on an EB. Electric Bites Charleston. Real quick here, Coach, something that happened earlier this week. This is if you are anywhere near the game of baseball in this state, you've got to know who Tim Wallace is. And Coach Wallace, due to some health reasons, I went to SMC, so no coach. Roomed with Jacob in South Carolina. He was one of our roommates. He's a changed man. We'll put it that way. But Tim Wallace has been at SMC forever, and he did step down this week. I know he's got some health things going on, so our thoughts and prayers go out to Coach Wallace and his family. But he's been doing this a long time, and one word describes Tim Wallace: winner.
Yeah, it's incredible. And hopefully, as Coach Wallace told a lot of us this week, hope to be back in the dugout, and we're all going to pray for that too. But it's a weird spring to not have him in a dugout and Gary Gilmore, Coach Gilmore, not in a dugout. Those guys were coaching when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And I don't tell you my year very much, but I graduated in 1989. So that tells you how long those guys have been around and why every opportunity I ever had to talk to them and listen, and I still do, I took advantage of it because those guys, I needed to Google to see the number of wins Tim Wallace and Gary Gilmore had. It's thousands. So we'll certainly be praying for him. And you're right, Division II got kicked off today. A lot of guys, first pitch at 1 o'clock. I've been texting Landon Powell. I got Brett Harker at Limestone and a coach at the College of Charleston. Berkey at Landers has always been a guy that I enjoy talking to. Coach Snyder at Newberry. This is his first year, first game as head coach. Been there a long time, but first time getting to be the head coach. And then at USC Aiken, Tyler Miller, whose dad, Joe Miller, recruited me, and his granddad recruited me at USC Aiken as an assistant coach. But a lot of great baseball kicking off in our state today. I hope I didn't miss. I'm sure I did. But those 5 I know. And then tomorrow, junior college.
Yeah.
You can go in today, but my son and USC Sumter kick it off tomorrow. So I'm making my way to beautiful Swainsboro, Georgia at some point tomorrow morning. You know, it's bad when you put it in your GPS and it just says no way there. So you have to put it back in. So I'll make my way down there tomorrow, and then they're back in Sumter on Sunday to see 1-9 kick off what's probably about his 40th year too. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. Oh, well, 1-9. Does he ever age? What's his deal? How does he do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't miss the start of JUCO baseball. I always thought it started way too early. My sophomore year, we were playing in the snow at Middle Georgia College. That was ridiculous. But anybody that loves the game of baseball, I'm gonna give a free plug to this guy. A gentleman named Rudy Jones has been covering baseball for a long time. He's got Palmetto State Baseball.com, I think is what it is. And he has a live scoreboard on there. And the live scoreboard for anybody, like you might have a neighbor or a friend or so, you just know somebody, they can't all play at Carolina or the College of Charleston or that team in the upstate or wherever.
Yep.
You know, guys have to play at Erskine and USC Aiken and Beaufort. Every game, if it's a team that is from this state, it is on that scoreboard. HBCUs, he's even got the Visit Panama City Beach Classic going on there. Florence Darlington is playing in that. They're down in the bottom of the first right now to, I don't even know what school this is, Coach. Florida Manatee, Sarasota or something like that. Yeah. But Indian River's playing down there. I mean, you know, there's a bunch of – so anyways, Chipola's down there. Boy, wow, that's a hell of a tournament. So if you give Rudy some love, if you like to follow along with scores, I'd suggest doing that. Palmetto State Baseball.com. You know Rudy Jones. He does he does it for all the right reasons.
He does, and he and I'll meet up here and go to Bella's and eat, and he'll ask me questions, and I just try to thank him, like you just said, as a parent who doesn't have all the access because of where my son plays. It's super cool, and he loves the game. I mean, there's nobody that loves South Carolina baseball more than Mr. Rudy.
Mm-hmm. Good for him. It's just, I'm glad he does that. It's such the state needed that.
Yes.
So good for him. Good for him. All right, Coach. Again, here we are. We're we're now 2 weeks away. Final couple of minutes here, and then we'll get you out of here so you can get some lunch and get ready to watch them scrimmage. They will scrimmage. I think it's a 1:30 scrimmage today, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll scrimmage this weekend, and then they'll have some stuff next week, and they'll be getting ready to go. You mentioned this is a key weekend generally to start maybe kind of guys kind of separating themselves and things like that. So what are the key questions right now? I mean, it could really be anything. I mean, I think we all seem to feel like Jersenbeck's going to go on Fridays.
Yeah.
Have a hunch for who's going to go on Saturdays and Sundays, but I don't think they've really ironed that out. But what are some of the key questions outside of the stuff that we've already covered?
Well, again, we'll start to see today. Kent just got here. We'll get a lineup and see who's starting. I think Jake McCoy's going to be a guy on a weekend that's big. Dylan Eskew. Don't be shocked if Dylan Eskew don't roll out there to start a weekend. That dude is a veteran guy who you can't sit up here and tell if he's given up 2 hits or 12 hits. He has a presence that I kept trying to comment about last year when I'd get him privately. Like, dude, you carry yourself. I threw this name at Coach Tanner the other day. You're going to laugh. Randy Haddon. It's a kid that was on our, 99 team, a JUCO kid who ended up being our Friday guy before Kip became that guy. He's just a calming guy, and you need that here. And Matthew Becker, Coach said it himself in the press conference. Do I use Matthew Becker in that, Scott Barber role? Does he close on Friday, start on Sunday? Does he become a starter? He even said he might be the most important pitcher they're trying to figure out. This is when he had his press conference last Friday. So I think a lot of that will get showed this weekend. The weather's awesome. So, I mean, it's not a case where, hey, it's too cold, I couldn't grip the ball, or it feels good. In fact, it's kind of warm in here in the booth. When I'm done with you, I'm opening the window, and I wouldn't have thought I'd be doing that for about another month. So it'll be cool. But questions to ask, I think catching's important this weekend to start really seeing who grabs that. I think they're still trying to figure out if Scooby's going to be healthy. If so, I think he's at third. And then that loaded outfield, as you said, the great thing is one of them guys get the DH. So you're kind of starting to figure out who can DH and handle being a DH, who's your outfield. So, and one name that Coach Mainieri brought up last week that I think is cool, don't forget about Bo Hollins.
Right.
Bo Hollins has really impressed Coach Mainieri and the staff defensively. He's always impressed me as a kid. I've known him through River Bluff and camps, and I know his dad obviously was just a special guy to come through this program. So a lot of cool stories that'll go in over the next 2 weeks leading up to opening day, and then opening weekend becomes the Ray Tanner weekend with all the alumni coming back as the field will be named for him. So I know you and I talk a ton about that in the next few times we're together.
There's no question. Coach Tanner joined Pat DeMarco and Stephen Garcia taping an episode of Tailgate Talks yesterday. That should be out next week. They might wait to release it one more week. But anyways, I know they had a good – they texted me last night. I'd sent them some questions to ask.
Yeah.
And I think they did that. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be the ultimate tip of the cap there to the greatest to ever do it, Coach Tanner. We'll talk more about guys like Nolan Naraki. You mentioned Tippett earlier. You know, the South Carolina, they feel like they've got the pieces. It's just getting the puzzle put together, and it's probably still going to take. They're not going to open the season and have all the answers. They're going to have to go a few weeks. They'll find more. So we'll get into all of that, and we're really excited about it. Coach, we could talk baseball all day. I'd be fine. I'd skip lunch and the whole 9 yards, man. If it was up to me, this would be all I would do. Wake up, turn on the mic, and let's just do this until we go to bed at night. But we all have things to get to. But we certainly continue to look forward to all the Fridays with you, my man.